Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Here's what's coming up on the program. A muted Independence Day in Ukraine today as President Zelensky warns of possible Russian airstrikes on major cities across the country. Thailand's Supreme Court suspends Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha from official duty while considering a legal challenge to his term limit. Americans in Georgia riled up after a special prosecutor says it will not pursue criminal charges against a police officer who fatally shot a black man in 2020. Welcome again. It's Independence Day in Ukraine today, but there are no open celebrations because the country is at war with Russia, and the president believes Russia is planning a barrage of airstrikes today. Today also marks the 6th month since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On February 24, Russia carried out what it calls a military operation to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine. To the Ukrainian president, 6 months on the move was the day his country, that's Ukraine, was reborn. It's been 6 months since the war started in Ukraine, and today, on the country's Independence Day, it is still at war with Russia. The Russian forces not relenting with their attacks across cities. President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned citizens to take air raid sirens seriously and to expect more attacks from Russia, especially today. In a recorded speech aired today to mark 31 years of independence, President Zelensky says Ukraine was reborn when Russia invaded on February 24 and will recapture annexed Crimea and other occupied areas in the east. He also said Ukraine no longer saw the war ending with peace, but instead with victory.
We finally became united. A new nation born on February 24 at 4 a.m. Not born, but reborn. A nation that did not cry, scream, nor take fright. One that did not flee, did not give up, and did not forget. What for us is the end of the war? We used to say peace, now we say victory. We won't look for mutual understanding with the terrorists, even though we understand the Russian language he came to defend, while killing thousands of people he came to liberate.
Earlier, he and the First Lady, Olena Zelenska, attended prayers for Ukraine at the St. Sophia Cathedral. He and the First Lady also paid tribute to fallen soldiers at a memorial honoring victims of the Maidan uprising. The Maidan movement, which took its name from the central Kyiv square, where demonstrators gathered on November 21, 2013, was a response to former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych's rejection of a trade agreement with the European Union. Over 100 protesters were killed in the subsequent 3 months of confrontations on Kyiv's Maidan Square. 48 allegedly gunned down in February 2014 by police snipers who, according to the Ukrainian authorities, received direct orders from Yanukovych. The government has imposed a 2-day curfew starting Tuesday evening through to Thursday morning over fears Russia might attack on Independence Day. In Kharkiv, police officers were seen patrolling mostly deserted streets as the curfew came into force. Shelling could be heard during the patrol. There are no celebrations across the country as they've all been banned. Police were also seen patrolling the streets of Mykolaiv. And in Kyiv, air raid warning disrupted morning quietness, but the streets were unusually empty, following the warning of the possibility that Russia could launch fresh missile attacks on major cities. The government also laid out the hulks of burnt-out Russian tanks and armored vehicles like war trophies in central Kyiv in a show of defiance. Leaders around the world have been throwing their support behind the people of Ukraine today. First off is U.S. President Joe Biden, who confirmed the United States will be sending nearly $3 billion in a fresh package of weapons and equipment. It's the biggest tranche of American security assistance sent to Ukraine to date, according to a statement from the White House. President Biden says the money will allow Ukraine to acquire air defense and artillery systems and munitions, as well as radars and other hardware. European leaders have been sending their support via microblogging site Twitter. France's President Emmanuel Macron said Ukraine was defending the stability of the world. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz pledged more weapons month by month, as well as further training for Ukrainian troops on Western military equipment. He's also pledged to aid Ukraine financially and help rebuild the destroyed cities and villages. His words were echoed by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who said, "Together with you, we will rebuild your cities brick by brick and replant your gardens and fields seed by seed." Her colleague in the European Council, President Charles Michel, praised Ukraine for fighting for common European values and principles and pledged to support Ukraine as much as we can. His words. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg opened his message with a quote by Ukrainian poet Taras Shevchenko, concluding, "It makes a great difference to NATO, too." He went on to commit NATO's support for as long as it takes, describing Ukraine's fight as an inspiration to the world.
Dear citizens of Ukraine, you are fighting to uphold your sovereignty and to protect your freedom in the face of naked aggression. We can never match the sacrifices you are making every day, but we can and we will stand by your side. Together with you, we will rebuild your cities, brick by brick, and replant your gardens and fields seed by seed. Thanks to your sacrifice, your children will grow up in a Ukraine that is just and free. There is a lot to do, but we can do it together. Europe is with you today and in the long run. Slava Ukraine.
Dear Ukrainian friends, today is not a day to wish you a happy independence celebration, because you are suffering, you are fighting, and you are fighting to defend your homeland, to defend the future of your country and the future of your children. But you are also fighting to defend our common European values and principles. And that's why your family members are our family members. That's why your future is our common future. And that's why we want to support you as much as we can to protect and to defend your independence, your sovereignty, and your territorial integrity. We are with you. Slava Ukraini.
Dear Ukrainians, dear friends, your great poet Taras Shevchenko wrote, "It makes great difference to me that evil folk and wicked men attack our Ukraine once so free, and rob and plunder it at will. It makes great difference to me." It makes great difference to NATO too. The Ukrainian armed forces and the whole Ukrainian people are showing tremendous courage and determination. And under President Zelensky's leadership, you are an inspiration to the world. You can continue to count on NATO's support for as long as it takes. Ukraine must prevail, and Ukraine will prevail. On your Independence Day, I wish you strength and success.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson expressed how Britons feel about Ukraine's Independence Day today with a floral arrangement made of sunflowers and blue hydrangeas adorning the doorway of his official residence, number 10 Downing Street. We'll see that in a minute. In a video message posted on his Twitter page, Mr. Johnson praised the steel and courage of the Ukrainian people in defending the country against the Russian invasion. So the UK had provided Ukraine with more defensive weapons than any other European country, including 7,000 anti-tank missiles, and would continue to provide every possible military, economic and humanitarian support. Boris Johnson is surprisingly in Kyiv today, meeting with President Zelensky. He has also announced £54 million military aid to Ukraine, with 200 drones to improve long-range surveillance and defensive targeting ability, amongst other military aid.
I'm delighted to offer my congratulations on the 31st anniversary of Ukraine's Declaration of Independence, and to remember that amazing day in 1991 when Ukrainians celebrated in the streets as their country was reborn as a sovereign state. Alas, today, Ukraine's independence is threatened once again, and her people are fighting with steel and with courage to defend their homes and their families, and to preserve their right to decide their own destiny in their own country. I've never doubted for a moment that Ukraine is going to win this struggle, because no force on earth can overcome the patriotism of 44 million Ukrainians. And however long it takes, the United Kingdom will stand with Ukraine and provide every possible military, economic and humanitarian support. Since the 24th of February, we've supplied Ukraine with more defensive weapons than any other European country, including nearly 7,000 anti-tank missiles, and we've welcomed over 100,000 of our Ukrainian friends to find safety here in the UK. One day, Ukraine will come through this ordeal and achieve victory. And when that moment comes, as it will, we in the UK will be even prouder to be friends of Ukraine.
Joining me now is the VOA correspondent Anna Chernikova. She's in Kyiv. Anna, a happy Independence Day to you today.
Thank you.
Give us a sense of what the mood has been like in Kyiv. I mean, the president announced there will be no celebrations, but we've seen pictures of people holding small ceremonies, just marking the day in some way.
Yes, well, a lot of people tried to leave big cities to the countrysides and spend time with their families, and a lot of people are actually spending time with their families, but still there are quite a lot of people who remain in the cities and in Kyiv in particular. And a lot of people are gathering around. Of course, there are now massive celebrations, and of course, people are more careful when they hear air raid sirens. And today, for instance, in Kyiv, as of now, it was 6 air raid sirens. The last one just ended before we started our conversation. So it's quite a noisy day in terms of the sirens today in Kyiv. But people are on the alarm, but they're not panicking and they're not afraid. This is for sure. People are trying to, mark this day. Of course, it's not about celebration, but marking this day, and people feel that this is exactly what they are fighting for, the independence itself.
And independence celebrations under very dire circumstances. Earlier, we learnt that the air raid sirens, as you mentioned, were heard in Kharkiv. Some were also heard in Kyiv. Have there been more of those today as the day wears on? And have there been attacks as well?
Well, actually, all these 6 air raid sirens that were in Kyiv were in other parts of Ukraine as well. I should say that almost every air raid siren is around the whole country. But of course, in some regions, there are even more frequent sirens that people can hear. Of course, we talk about here about Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, and Zaporizhia. These regions are under the most threat. For example, during the night today, the city of Zaporizhia was hit with Russian missiles twice. As we know, for the moment, military infrastructure was was targeted and hit, but no casualties reported so far. Also, there were hits in Mirhorod, and this is a Poltava region city. And this was one of the worst hits for today, for the moment. Also, it was both military infrastructure and civilian infrastructure that was targeted and damaged. In addition, just a couple of hours ago, we heard about certain hits, a couple of hits in Khmelnytsky region, which is in the west part of the country. We again know about military infrastructure that was damaged, but no casualties reported yet. Also, a couple of missiles were destroyed by the air defense in Chernivtsi, in the Chernihiv region, Cherkasy region. As well as in Vinnytsia, which is central part of the country. And I should say that in the south, situation is also quite, noisy and quite difficult, because the city of Mykolaiv is under a very constant threat and under very heavy shelling. And just now, before our conversation, it was confirmed that there are hits in Mykolaiv region, but we don't have any details yet. So, of course, today there is more. Well, I should say that there is more sirens in general, so more threat than it was in the past weeks, if we look in general over the country. But those areas which are under constant threat, they remain under constant threat. And for example, the city of Kharkiv, which you mentioned, it's under very heavy shelling, very bad shelling since yesterday evening, and it was not stopped. So it's just non-stop until now, this very moment. So situation is tough, but I cannot say that, anything massive and very, extremely bad. Oh, just now is another air raid siren. I'm sorry. So I cannot, but still I cannot say that anything, super bad has yet happened, which was actually people getting ready for today on the Independence Day.
Anna, you just said that there was just another air raid siren. Is it unnerving for you, or are you just used to hearing the sounds, as they go off?
Well, to be honest, you get used to this in 6 months of war. But of course, today, as I already mentioned, people are more careful. I'm staying in quite a safe place, so I also, considered this as an option for today. But still, it is quite, people quite get used to it. This is true. And this is why actually the government was trying to, remind people to be more attentive to these sounds, especially today.
There's currently a curfew going on across the country, imposed in the country. It started yesterday. It ends tomorrow morning. But the president has been to the cathedral today, the Sofia Cathedral. He has honored fallen soldiers. He has also awarded golden stars, we'll talk about that in a moment, to Ukrainian soldiers and families of servicemen killed in the war. All of this is taking place today. They've really taken place today because, it's a bit... it's not really confirmed, really, how the Ukrainian president is moving around. If there is a war going on and he's given a warning about possible airstrikes, is it possible all of this took place today in Kyiv, in and around Kyiv? The president and his wife, the first lady, are going to these places and then doing these things just to boost the morale of many Ukrainians and the soldiers as well.
Yeah, it looks like it was happening today. Kyiv is not under a special curfew. So in Kyiv, there is a standard one from 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock in the evening. But of course, those places where president was present, they were under very high security, and it was not announced. So apparently, only those soldiers who were awarded were informed and knew the location. In terms of the church service, it was a closed ceremony, and this area is pretty much under very high security all the time, because this is a very pretty much city center, and it's a heritage of Ukraine. So this is quite a secure place. Of course, there are risks, but I guess that the president team is taking care of that. And if we talk about the monument of the fallen soldiers, those that died during Maidan, this area is located in the so-called governmental district. So this is also a very secure place. And we know that this district, people who are working in this district were working remotely for the whole week. So I think that this was done in order to ensure the secure movement of the president and his wife. But it looks that it really happened today. At least we received reports, and we received footages from today.
Anna, keep staying safe. We're here with you, just hoping and praying all of this ends as soon as possible. Thank you for giving us the update.
Thank you very much.
We'll have more on the Russian invasion just coming up after the break. Plus, China's mission to the UN condemns countries envoys it says are interfering with her internal affairs on the Taiwan question. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're still covering the updates and developments out of Ukraine today. It's Independence Day and 6 months since the Russian invasion began on February 24. As I mentioned in my conversation with Anna, President Zelensky has been presenting family members of deceased soldiers and soldiers themselves with a Golden Star Award, also known as the Golden Star Order. It is presented by the President to servicemen of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. He told them, "I would like to thank you for that's in Ukraine's independence, half of a year of violence full-scale war, a year of violence full-scale war, 8 years of our country's heroic defense during the war in Donbass in the east, a generational fight for Ukraine. I'm asking you now to honor with a minute of silence all the Ukrainians who gave their lives for ours, to honor them with this minute." And it was followed shortly by a minute of silence. Well, joining me now is another Ukrainian, this time the chargé d'affaires at the embassy in Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital, Mr. Soltis Bodan, beg your pardon. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. I appreciate your being here, and a happy Independence Day to you.
Thank you very much. It is an honor for me to address the people of Nigeria.
And how are you feeling being so far from your home country, where celebrations are muted today because of the fear of possible missile strikes by Russia?
It's really very painful for me to see all this war going on in my country, all these human sufferings. You see people get killed, people are losing their loved ones. And especially is that when I think more about this war, this is so ridiculous. I mean, this war does not bring anybody anything good. It just serves some ambition of the Russian leader, and that's all. I mean, even Russian people also, they will not get anything from this war. Russia has the largest territory in the world. The territory of Russia is 17 million square kilometers. It is 17 times bigger than the territory of Nigeria. And they have very vast natural resources. They could have used it all to make their country an economic paradise. Instead, they use all these vast resources, they waste their people's lives just to kill other peoples. This is unspeakable, this is unbelievable that this is going on in the 21st century.
we understand how you feel today, and I know many Ukrainians also feel, just as disappointed and angry and frustrated as you do. But there have been messages today just encouraging many Ukrainians, especially from the European leaders, who are reiterating their support for Ukraine. And then there are also more pledges of military aid for Ukraine and those promises of standing by your country for the long haul. What does it mean for Ukraine hearing, these pledges from European leaders and receiving this moral support? What does it mean for you?
It really means a lot for us that people in the world are supporting us, that they provide us with moral support, that they provide us with military support. As I told, Russia is a huge country with territory of Russia 28 times bigger than the territory of Ukraine. Population of Russia is more than five times bigger than the population of Ukraine. Russia spent all these years accumulating weapons and ammunition in order to start this war. And without the help from other countries, we would be in really big trouble. So we really appreciate any help. We are very thankful for everybody who helps us. And we believe that, that if Russia reached its goal, then it would create horrible precedent. Then many other countries might think that, okay, if Russia got away with this, if Russia got away with attacking peaceful country just for its some imperial ambitions, then, okay, some other countries also can do it. And who will be the next victim?
President Volodymyr Zelensky has been very courageous. He has been very consistent with his video addresses since the start of this war, sometimes chiding world leaders to impose more sanctions on Russia, calling for the country to be labeled a terrorist nation. He's also vowed to regain the Crimea region, saying the war started when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. Do you feel the leaders should have done more to stop Russia back then? Because the president traces, what's happening today to what happened back then in 2014 when Crimea was annexed by Russia.
I fully agree with such his position. I strongly believe that what we have today, this war that we have today, is because Russia believed that it got away with annexing Crimea back in 2014. It believed that it got away with occupying part of the territory of Ukraine, parts of Donetsk and Lugansk regions. So Russia got this feeling of impunity, as a result of which it decided to start this war now. You see, a Russian leader uses a lot of rhetorics and ideas which Hitler used 90 years ago when he started the Second World War. Russians also believed in blitzkrieg, that they would be able to take over Kiev in 3 days. The Russian militaries, some Russian militaries who were taken captive or killed in the combat in Ukraine, they carried with them their parade uniform. They thought that in 3 days they would do parades in Kiev, in the capital of Ukraine. So, back then in 2014, they were calling it hybrid war. They were calling it as frozen conflicts, things like that. So what we have today is direct consequence that not enough resolute actions were taken against Russia back then in 2014. And if Russia gets away with that today, then its appetite will grow, and it will keep attacking other peaceful nations. So it should not be allowed. I believe that all civilized people in the world want peace. And in order to have peace, we have to jointly stop Russia today.
Is Ukraine behind the attacks, the recent attacks in the Crimea region? And was Ukraine also behind the killing of Daria Dugina?
Okay. As far as the explosions in Crimea are concerned, the Ukrainian army never made any comments with this regard. And the Russians are saying that all these explosions were caused by reckless smoking by their soldiers. So what can I add? I think that Russian commanders in place can better see what happened in the military units. If the soldiers are reckless smokers, but what can I say? Personally, I think that smoking is very harmful habit, and people should not smoke. As to Daria Dugina, well, first of all, before her murder, I have never heard about her. I've heard the name of her father, not much. I just knew that there is such a voice of Russia, like a big person of propaganda, philosopher of Russian world. But it's like he was not among the most famous ones. So there was no point in killing Daria or her father. Her death, I mean, because the theory is that actually her father was the target. Neither her death would not change anything. So we had no reason to kill her. And also, Ukrainians are not using terrorist methods. Ukrainians are not aiming at the civilian populations, even if that population is saying some bad things on television. These are not our methods. We would never do this thing. So this is for Russian authorities to investigate this death. But all I know is that we had no reason to kill her. We have nothing good would come from her death for us, and we did not do it.
Soltis Badan, I appreciate your making time for us today, and once again, a happy Independence Day to you and to all Ukrainians.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Pope Francis has called today for concrete steps to end the war in Ukraine and avert the risk of a nuclear disaster at the Zaporizhzhia power plant. It comes as the IAEA, the UN nuclear watchdog, said on Tuesday will visit the Russian-occupied plant in Ukraine within days if talks to gain access succeed. Russia and Ukraine have repeatedly accused each other of firing at the facility, and which is the largest of its kind in Europe, and which pro-Moscow forces took over soon after the February 24 invasion. Pope Francis told his weekly general audience, "I hope that concrete steps will be taken to bring an end to the war and to avert the risk of a nuclear disaster at Zaporizhzhia." In a related development, Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says his country will restart more idled nuclear plants and look at developing next-generation reactors, setting the stage for a major policy shift on nuclear energy a decade after the Fukushima disaster. The comment coming from Kishida, who also said the government would look at extending the lifespan of existing reactors, highlight how the Ukraine crisis and soaring energy costs have forced both a change in public opinion and a policy rethink towards nuclear power. Japan has kept most of its nuclear plants idled in the decade since a massive earthquake and tsunami in 2011 triggered a nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. Russian opposition politician Yevgeny Roisman has been detained at his home per video shown on Russian social media in the latest move by authorities to punish critics of the military operation in Ukraine. The video of the arrest showed Roisman, former mayor of Ural city of Yekaterinburg, being taken away by law officials today. Earlier, Roisman was seen in the video telling reporters that he was being investigated under law against discrediting the armed forces. He said he was being arrested basically for one phrase, the invasion of Ukraine. Asked where he said that, he replied, "I've said it everywhere and I'll say it now." Roisman confirmed being investigated for discrediting the Russian army. The offence, newly introduced after Russia's February 24 start of what it calls its special military operation in Ukraine, carries a prison sentence of up to 5 years. The UK imported no fuel from Russia in June for the first time on record. That's according to official figures. Imports of goods from Russia also fell to £33 million in June. That's the lowest level since records began in January 1997, according to the Office of National Statistics. Western nations have imposed strict sanctions on Russia since it invaded Ukraine in February. The UK is pledged to phase out Russian oil imports by the end of the year and gas imports as soon as possible. Fuel imports from Russia fell by £499 million, or 100%, compared with the average for the previous 12 months to February. In other news now, Eurotunnel passengers were stranded for nearly 5 hours at subsea level after the train broke down beneath the channel, leaving hundreds of passengers to be ushered to the service tunnel. The incident happened late on Tuesday, affecting the 3:50 p.m. Eurotunnel low shuttle service from Calais to Folkestone. Travellers on the service shared their experience on social media, with videos showing people walking through the alternate tunnel alongside the 31-mile rail route between Britain and France. Some passengers carried suitcases and walked with dogs through the tunnel, while travellers on Calais were urged to stay away from the terminal until 6 a.m. today, leading to large queues at the shuttle terminal late into Tuesday evening. In a statement, a spokesperson for Eurotunnel Low Shuttle said a train has broken down in the tunnel and we're in the process of transferring customers to a separate passenger shuttle via the service tunnel to return to our Folkestone terminal. We apologise sincerely for this inconvenience. Thailand's Constitutional Court suspended Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-o-cha today after accepting a petition from an opposition party seeking his ousting on the grounds that he has held office for his full legally mandated term. The petition filed to Parliament last week by the main opposition Pheu Thai party argued that Prayuth's time spent as head of a military junta after he staged a coup when he was army chief in 2014 should count towards his constitutionally stipulated 8-year term. Though Prayuth could be restored to his position when the court rules on the petition, the surprise suspension threw Thai politics into confusion. Prayuth has 15 days to respond, the court told media in a statement, and that a panel of judges ruled 5-4 in favour of his suspension starting from today. And in Malaysia, supporters of Najib Razak delivered a memorandum to the country's national palace in which they call for a pardon for the recently jailed former Prime Minister. A court upheld his prior guilty conviction on charges related to a multi-billion-dollar graft scandal at State Fund 1 Malaysia Development Berhad, sentencing him to 12 years in jail and a 210 million ringgit fine. It's about $46.84 million. Some supporters described the trial as hurried and said Najib was not presented with an opportunity to defend himself after the court had earlier rejected an effort by Najib to forestall the final verdict by requesting the removal of the Chief Justice from the panel. The federal court ruling caps the stunning downfall of Najib, who until 4 years ago governed Malaysia with an iron grip and suppressed local investigators of the 1MDB scandal that has implicated financial institutions and high-ranking officials worldwide. China's not done talking about visits to Taiwan. Its mission to the United Nations condemned the few countries' envoys for interfering with China's internal affairs on the Taiwan question. In a statement released on Tuesday, the Chinese mission announced a so-called joint statement they issued on the situation of the Taiwan Strait region, saying its accusations against China are groundless, unreasonable, and irresponsible. The Chinese mission statement said that the permanent representatives to the UN of a very few nations include Belize, the Kingdom of Eswatini, Guatemala, Saint Vincent, and the Grenadines issued a joint statement on the Taiwan question and the current situation in the Taiwan Strait, which failed to make a distinction between right and wrong and groundlessly blamed China's justified measures to safeguard its national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Chinese mission statement also insists there is but one China in the world, and that Taiwan is an inseparable part of China's territory, and the government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legitimate government representing the whole of China. Angolans have been voting today in a general election, which is expected to be the most closely fought since its independence in 1975. The National Electoral Commission expects 14.4 million registered voters to cast their ballots between 7 in the morning and 5 in the evening across 13,238 polling stations in Angola and in the diaspora. 8 political parties are, however, participating in these elections.
According to state-owned broadcaster TPA, President Lourenço is the first presidential candidate to cast his vote in the elections, which have been described by analysts as highly contested. Lourenço, who is seeking re-election, voted in the early morning at a polling station in Luanda, surrounded by heavy security. He encouraged citizens to go out and cast their votes.
We have just exercised the right to vote. It is fast and simple, so we advise all eligible citizens to do the same. In the end, we all win. Democracy wins, and Angola wins.
As the presidential candidate of Angola's main opposition party, Adalberto da Costa Jr., cast his vote, he called for election laws to be respected. Mr. Jr. was accompanied by his wife and a jubilant crowd.
I urge all to vote, and that nobody goes without fulfilling this great opportunity, because the elections are a celebration. My expectation is that the day goes normally, that it is tranquil, and that at the end of the day, all votes are respected, all results are placed at the polling stations as the law says, and that Angola celebrates its choices.
Angola's only female presidential candidate, Florbela Malaquias, also cast her vote. The 63-year-old lawyer and former journalist is running for president among 7 men. Ms. Malaquias is running on the Humanist Party of Angola ticket. She's a former member of the main opposition UNITA party.
Looking at the path our country is in, I think it's very important to elect a new president who maybe can change the current status of Angola.
Angola's youth make up over half of the country's voters, but many feel forgotten. Youth unemployment reached an all-time high last year. Young people are now eager for change amid a high cost of living that has made life harder for many. Analysts say tweaked vote counting rules may delay official results by days, raising tensions, which some fear may boil over into violence.
We'll take another short break. When we come back, she's been described as the most famous face on the planet. That's how biographer Andrew Morton remembers Britain's late Princess Diana. Stay with us. Well, back to the Japanese Prime Minister now, Fumio Kishida, who's announced Japan will waive pre-departure COVID-19 tests for vaccinated travelers to the country. Kishida, who himself is recuperating from a bout of COVID, says from September 7, people who have received 3 doses of COVID vaccine will no longer need to provide a negative COVID-19 test certificate. Japan has maintained some of the strictest pandemic border measures among major economies, requiring travelers to present a negative coronavirus test taken within 72 hours of departure. Back in June, though, it opened up to tourists for the first time in 2 years, but requirements that they apply for visas and stick to guided package tours have kept actual numbers of inbound visitors in small numbers. A fresh spell of rain in parts of Pakistan's southern Sindh province has added to the woes of residents of Hyderabad, the province's second largest city, already flooded with accumulated rainwater, especially in the low-lying areas. The flooding has caused suspension of business, trade and commercial activities in major markets and bazaars at low-lying areas of Hyderabad. Pakistan has urged the international community for assistance in the relief efforts. It's unable to cope with the relief and rehabilitation caused by massive floods triggered by torrential rains, killing over 800 people since last month. In rural Sindh, all agricultural canals have overflowed, submerging villages and farmlands as people complain that they have not received any assistance from the government. July's national rainfall was almost 200% above average, according to a senior official at the Meteorological Office who was speaking earlier today. Let's make another quick detour to South Africa now, where thousands of people have been taking part in a national strike to protest over the rising cost of living and economic woes in the country. Two of the country's largest unions are leading the strike, calling for a total shutdown of the economy in protest against high unemployment levels and rising fuel and electricity costs.
Different South African trade unions marched through the streets of several cities today. In Pretoria, they took their protest to the union buildings, the seat of government, demanding changes from the government regarding the country's economic challenges. Despite government issuing a statement that workers who participate in the strike will face the no work, no pay policy, workers came out in their numbers to voice their grievances.
The high cost of living disproportionately affects the poor. So it's the poorest of the poor that are actually suffering, because if you're rich, you're not really feeling the pinch. Maybe the pinch for you is not being able to buy, your favorite pair of shoes when you want to. But for ordinary South Africans, it's a big problem.
You cannot, out of good conscience, offer workers, a meager salary, given the economic situation that we find ourselves in. We're hoping that this sends a very firm message, not only to the government but to the private sector as well, because they will be affected by the fact that workers are today, have decided to withdraw their labor, and that of course will have an impact on the day-to-day running of the economy.
The cost of living is too high. Electricity is high. Everything is high. So we are here to demand jobs for young people. 8 million people are unemployed. Yesterday, the Stats SA released the stats. People are unemployed. We need jobs. Young people.
Britain's late Princess Diana was probably the most famous face on the planet, along with the Queen, that's Elizabeth, with people following the narrative arc of her life with an absolute fascination. Speaking ahead of the 25th anniversary of her death on August 31st, 1997, royal biographer Andrew Morton said Diana was tremendously popular. She had a kind of charisma that drew people in, he said. Diana was thrust into global spotlight in 1981 when the then 20-year-old married Queen Elizabeth's eldest son and heir to the throne, Prince Charles. They had two sons together, William and Harry, before separating in 1992 and divorcing in 1996. Details of her life were described to Morton for his 1992 biography, Diana, Her True Story. Diana helped through an intermediary in the writing of the book, which depicted her as trapped in a loveless marriage and attempting suicide to attract Charles's attention. I know I love Diana, loved her, cried the day she died. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.